150 tips came in to help Oregon State Police solve the mystery behind a 9-year-old girl's murder. But investigators say what helped them solve the case was DNA evidence. Haley Mae Coblentz body was found in a duffel bag by the Oregon coast. Troopers compared her to reports of missing children, but that didn't lead to any results. Their next step was to work with an agency called Parabon, who provided images of what Coblentz looked like. That, along with DNA, helped them solve the case.
It's a long time. It can get really frustrating. And I think there was a big fear that this would go cold just because we weren't able to identify who the victim was.
Investigators are calling this investigation bittersweet. While they are happy to have made arrests and know who this little girl was, she still suffered a tragic death. Now they are waiting on the prosecution. Shawna Browning was the girl's mother, and Browning's girlfriend, Lauren Harrison, have been charged in her death. They are currently in Michigan awaiting extradition to Oregon.
Yeah, Kelly, and this is all about masking. The state recently dropped its outdoor mask mandate, but there is a process going on right now that would potentially make the indoor mask mandate a rule indefinitely. OHA met with a committee today, and that committee's role is to provide feedback on the rules in place, what should and shouldn't be included, and the impact those rules will have on the public.
We've been dealing with masks for about a year and a half, and in Oregon, it's looking like the indoor mask mandate will be here for a while longer. On Thursday, OHA convened a Rules Advisory Committee, or RAC, to discuss the future of masking in the state.
Can you explain a little bit about what that RAC is?
Sure. We have a temporary rule in place that requires masking in indoor public places and in transportation hubs and so on. That rule will expire unless we adopt it formally.
Considering the COVID situation, OHA is looking to make the indoor mask rule permanent.
Permanent, that might scare a lot of people. They might think, oh my gosh, are we going to be masking for forever? What does a permanent ruling do? Why not just extend the temporary rule?
Permanent means indefinitely. It doesn't necessarily mean permanent. We could repeal it as well. But we are only allowed to have a temporary rule for 180 days. And if anything that goes beyond 180 days, we cannot extend it temporarily. It's either, adopt it formally or let it go.
Now, so here's the deal. This committee only meets one. That meeting wrapped up at 4 o'clock. When OHA proposes the rule formally, that is when the public will get a say. There will be time for public comment and a public hearing. Those are still to be determined as to when they'll happen. Exactly, Kelly. This temporary rule expires after 180 days. So this move to make the rule permanent would allow the state to keep the rule in place. It can, however, be repealed.
Inside in Oregon, whether or not you're vaccinated, you have to wear a mask.
I, again, really worry about a mandate that doesn't have any enforcement.
On Thursday, community stakeholders like those in the restaurant industry gave feedback to OHA about the potential this rule gets implemented indefinitely.
It seems like every time I personally go out and I'm wearing my face covering, that there's more and more people that are not wearing face coverings, even though there's a statewide indoor mask mandate.
This committee meeting is the first step. If and when a rule is formally proposed, that's when the public will get a chance to share their thoughts. When that happens is still to be determined. So we asked OHA about why keeping this rule in place is necessary. At this point, about 70% of Oregonians have had at least one shot of the vaccine series.
When do we start to move forward in a more normal sense with the variants instead of just reacting to them?
Right. I think the proof is going to be in the pudding, if you will. The bottom line is the bottom line.
When the variants stop putting significant strain on the healthcare system and the mortality rate improves, that's when Dr. Paul Cieslak with OHA says we'll move back towards normal. We also talked with Dr. Jennifer Vines, the health officer for Multnomah County, about masking and vaccinations.
I think masking for everybody indoors through the winter months, I think that's a reasonable way forward.
And Dr. Vine says once we get through this season and have a better understanding of Omicron, we'll likely be able to reevaluate.
We'll be looking at our disease transmission patterns and looking to see where might we be able to step back masks. But I think that's still a few months out.
Now, one quick clarification there, it's about 80% of Oregonians who have had at least one of their shots in the COVID-19 series. We did also ask the governor's office about the mask rules. When will mask rules become more of a personal responsibility instead of a mask mandate? We heard back from the governor's deputy communications director, and this is what he tells us. He says, quote, well, it's great news that more Oregonians are getting vaccinated every day and children 5 to 11 are now eligible. It's also true that most school-age children are not yet fully vaccinated, and masks are an effective way to keep them safe.
The door opens to a bedroom filled with emotions, left mostly untouched inside their Northwest Portland home. Memories.
He liked to cook, and
to honor their son. As Jennifer and John Epstein publicly share Cal's story in the community, they continue to face questions about how he died.
They ask, what problems Cal had or what signs did we miss.
They say signs aren't so clear, and not every overdose death is one and the same. For Cal, there were no signs of addiction. They were aware of their 18-year-old son's anxiety, and he was getting help. But in December 2020, home from holiday break after his first semester at the University of Hawaii, John said Cal may have been stressed. It led to a mistake they never could have expected.
He sought out an oxy, and he got it on Snapchat, but it turned out to be filled with fentanyl, and he never stood a chance.
Cal was unknowingly poisoned by fentanyl. The synthetic illicit opioid is mixed into counterfeit prescription pills being sold illegally. It's 50 times more potent than heroin, and the DEA says a dose as small as a grain of salt can be deadly. As the Epstein said, people think they're being sold Xanax, OxyContin, or Adderall for real.
This young culture is used to ordering up a pizza or an Uber, and you can order up a pill just that easily.
But the DEA says counterfeit pills are popping up at record levels. Seizures jumped about 430% since 2019, and taking them can be rolling the dice on your life, with 2 out of 5 containing a lethal dose. The CDC says the crisis hit a record high. More than 100,000 people died of drug overdoses in the U.S. in the 12-month period ending in April, and synthetic opioids like fentanyl were the driving force.
And so we feel like the
Epsteins tell me scrutiny of the substance has spawned a community.
So this is Charlie. This is a photo of him at his older brother's wedding a couple years ago.
Ed Turnan says his son's death by fentanyl poisoning last year in California at the age of 22 set Ed off on a path to warn his son's peers. He and his wife founded Song for Charlie. They're focused on so-called fentapills, a.k.a. a fake prescription pill made of fentanyl. And the campaign is focused on kids, meeting them where they're at, on social media, with an urging of caution.
It's not don't do drugs, it's don't do these drugs. You need to take self-medication with prescription pills that you get from some random person off your playlist.
That's Cal with his cousin Ashley.
Jennifer is working for the nonprofit now, too, opening the door to what could be a life-saving discussion.
Unless you can be 100% sure that your kid will never experiment, then you can't feel like you're safe, and you have to have conversations.